Stevan Markovich, born on May 10, 1937, in Belgrade, Yugoslavia during the tumultuous backdrop of the Second World War, became entwined in the tumultuous world of politics. Under President Tito's regime, Markovic, along with his cousin Milos Milosevich, gained notoriety as street fighters in the city. Markovic's exceptional skills caught the attention of Serbian gangster Nikola Milinkovich, eventually leading to his prominent role in Milinkovich's funeral. In contrast to his friend Milosevic, who hailed from an influential local family, Markovic's background diverged significantly. The Milosevic family once basked in prominence, with Milosevic's grandfather serving as the mayor of Knjazevac. However, as time progressed, their family's private property was confiscated by the state, fueling Milosevic's growing resentment, ultimately fostering his desire to escape to the Western world. Ironically, it was Stevan Markovich who managed to depart the country first. In the summer of 1958, accompanied by 4 companions, he embarked on a vacation to the Istrian Peninsula and seized the opportunity to elude his homeland. Initially journeying to Italy, he then traversed the Alps into France, swiftly establishing connections within the Parisian Immigrants Association. For the ensuing 7 years, Markovich grappled with making a living, resorting to odd jobs as a photographer while leading a nomadic existence, seeking refuge in overnight facilities, and eventually finding himself back on the streets. There, he harnessed the skills acquired in Belgrade, navigating the ambiguous realm he knew all too well. However, his journey took an unfortunate turn when an unsuccessful robbery attempt resulted in his incarceration in a Belgian prison, where he assumed the role of a driver. Meanwhile, fortune smiled upon Milos Milosevich in Belgrade. In 1962, the renowned actor Alain Delon'S arrived in the city to film a movie about Marco Polo. Although the film remained unfinished, Delon'S employed Milosevic as his security guard during his time in the country. The 2 individuals embarked on a journey together, traveling to Venice for filming and subsequently to Paris, where Milosevic decided to extend his stay beyond 1964. Eventually, he ventured to Hollywood, introducing Delon'S to his future wife, Natalie Barthélemy. Upon parting ways with Delon'S, the actor found himself in need of a new bodyguard. Milosevic suggested his cousin, Markovic, for the position. With Delon'S assistance, Markovic was released from prison, instantly immersing himself in a new world of opulence and connections, mirroring the realm with which Markovic was all too familiar. Milosevic reveled in the glitz and glamour of the Hollywood lifestyle. He tied the knot with Cynthia Baron, a renowned dancer with ties to influential individuals of the time. By 1965, Milosevic found himself entangled in an illicit affair with actress Barbara Ann Thomason, who had previously been married to actor Mickey Rooney. Tragically, on January 31, 1966, the lifeless bodies of Milosevic, aged 24, and Thomason, aged 29, were discovered in Rooney's Los Angeles home. The official version pointed to Milosevic shooting Rooney, followed by Thomason, before ultimately taking his own life. However, the circumstances surrounding the murders gave rise to numerous questions at the time, as many pieces of evidence failed to align with the official account. Subsequently, on October 30, 1973, the lifeless body of Cynthia Baron, aged 39, was found in the trunk of a car parked outside a supermarket. She had been bound and brutally beaten to death. The perpetrator responsible for this heinous crime remains at large, and justice eludes the victim to this day. Meanwhile, in France, Markovic reveled in his newfound life and the opportunities to utilize the skills he had acquired under the guidance of Nikola Milinkovich. He gained notoriety as a gambler, often suspected of cheating, but more notably for hosting extravagant high-class parties characterized by excessive sexual activities. These gatherings caught the attention of French authorities, leading to increased scrutiny. to maintain a sense of control and potentially leverage over attendees. Markovich meticulously equipped the venues with strategically placed video cameras, including the bedrooms. The exact extent of Delon'S involvement in these events remains shrouded in mystery, but it is evident that he deviated from the image of an immaculate movie star and had connections to organized crime. Delon held a fascination for gangsters and often portrayed their personas on screen. He maintained friendships with individuals deeply involved in criminal activities, including his notable associate Gaetano Zampa, who was linked to the infamous Marcel Bar massacre and the murder of politician Marcel Francesca. In a 1970 interview, Alain Delon remarked, "There's probably a lot you won't understand. It's a question of origin. I'm a Corsican myself, and in places like this, notions of loyalty and honor still carry weight. I'm not concerned about what my friend did. Everyone is accountable for their own actions. It doesn't matter what he did. Most of my friends are gangsters. We became friends before I even became an actor." During the latter half of the 1960s, Alain Delon rose to prominence as one of Europe's primary sex symbols, captivating audiences with his performances in films such as Plain Soleil, Purple Noon, where he portrayed the psychopathic Tom Ripley, Rocco and his brothers, L'Eclipse, The Eclipse, Les Aventuriers, The Last Adventure, and Le Samurai, The Samurai. However, despite his wealth and fame, Delon remained associated with the notorious Corsican mobster Francois Marcantoni. Marcantoni, a well-known figure in the mob, had gained recognition for his influential role in the resistance during World War II, earning prestigious awards like the Military Cross and the Medal of Resistance. He had a long-standing feud with other infamous figures in French criminal history, including Pierrot the Madman and Francis the Belgian. These individuals seized the opportunity to infiltrate high society and the glamorous lives of stars like Alain Delon and his rival, Jean-Paul Belmondo. Markovich's life would have continued relatively smoothly if he hadn't made the ill-fated decision to sell photos of Delon and Marcantoni together to the press. However, while Delon remained a superstar and Marcantoni a notorious outlaw, an even more prominent figure emerged from Markovich's pictures: Claude Pompidou, the wife of French Prime Minister and later President Georges Pompidou. Both Claude and Georges were regular attendees at Markovich's parties. The 1960s marked a period of political turbulence in France, with the Fifth Republic still in its early stages. The Fifth Republic refers to the era that began after the adoption of a new constitution and continues to the present day. In May 1968, widespread student and worker protests almost pushed the country into a state of civil war, leading President Charles de Gaulle to call upon the military to maintain control. By the end of June, the country headed to the polls, and Prime Minister Georges Pompidou, aligned with de Gaulle's party, employed tried-and-true campaign strategies, emphasizing national security and portraying themselves as protectors of the Republic against the perceived Red Menace. This fear-mongering technique, often referred to as the Reds under the bed, proved successful. The Union of Democrats for the Republic was formed, defeating the Federation of the Democratic and Socialist Left led by François Mitterrand, another former prime minister. However, tensions grew between de Gaulle and Pompidou during the campaign. Shortly after the election, François Mitterrand resigned, paving the way for Pompidou to be hailed as the successor to the aging military leader, de Gaulle, who was now 78 years old. The protests in France coincided with the deteriorating relationship between Delon and Markovich. Delon became increasingly concerned about his bodyguard's lifestyle, as substantial sums of money were squandered on gambling, and rumors circulated of Markovich engaging in an affair with Delon's wife, Nathalie. Delon offered Markovich a generous severance package, but the bodyguard refused, demanding even more, a demand the renowned actor was unwilling to fulfill. It is widely believed that Delon'S refusal to comply with Markovich's demands eventually drove him to resort to blackmail. On September 22, 1968, Markovich left his residence and hailed a black Peugeot 404 taxi at a crossroads. Witnesses reported that his friend, Milos Milosevich, was already waiting for him in the back seat. However, on October 1, while Delon'S was filming The Pool in Saint-Tropez, Markovich's lifeless body was discovered in a landfill in Alain, a commune west of Paris. Forensic experts determined that Stevan had been murdered, his hands and feet were bound, and his body was wrapped in a sheet. Initially, investigators believed that Stevan Markovich had succumbed to fatal injuries caused by blunt force trauma. However, a subsequent autopsy invalidated the initial findings, establishing that the cause of death was a gunshot wound. Delon'S was summoned for questioning in Paris and initially denied any knowledge of Markovich. Unfortunately for Alain, the gendarmes possessed letters written by Markovich to his acquaintances, where he detailed his dire financial circumstances and expressed dissatisfaction with working for Delon'S and his wife. In one letter to his brother in Yugoslavia, Stevan hinted at doing something significant that would alter his life forever. He also mentioned Markovic in the letters, allowing the gendarmes to swiftly connect the dots, uncovering the existence of sex parties involving Delon'S and the Pompidou family. Furthermore, they learned about the explicit photographs of Claude Pompidou that Stevan Markovich had taken. Delon'S and Markovic attracted closer scrutiny following another letter from Markovich to his brother, where he asserted, "If I am killed, it is 100% the fault of Alain Delon'S and his godfather, Francois Markovic." Rumors circulated that Delon'S might have been involved in Markovich's demise due to Stevan having filmed Delon'S participation in a homosexual orgy. The existence of such footage could have tarnished Delon'S image, as he was one of Europe's foremost sex symbols and most recognizable actors. However, during a BBC interview on the case in 1969, Delon'S hinted at his bisexuality, perhaps to deflect attention from the rumors surrounding his alleged involvement. Why should there be any issue with having homosexual preferences? Have I harmed anyone? Am I accountable for anything? If I enjoy something, I indulge in it. In France, we have a remarkable actor named Michael Simon, and he once said, "If you love your goat, make love to your goat. Love is the only thing that matters." When questioned, Milos Milosevich stated that after Stevan exited the first cab, he entered another one. Milosevich returned to Belgrade and informed others there that his life was in danger in France. He penned 2 letters, one to his brother Stevan in Yugoslavia and another to Nathalie Delon'S. In those letters, he corroborated Markovich's claims of involvement by Alain Delon'S and Francois Markovic in Stevan's murder, alleging that they had sought refuge in the apartment of Stevan's girlfriend, Claude Haas. It was believed that Markovich possessed substantial material for blackmail. According to Markovic, their plan was to meet, discuss matters, and find a peaceful resolution. However, an alternative version of events emerged. Some accounts suggested that the following scenario occurred in street Tropez. Markovic, Delon'S, and Milosevich spent time together when they were not filming. Upon learning about the impending blackmail, Delon'S instructed Milosevich to travel to Paris and gather all the incriminating evidence, diaries, notebooks, and photographs. Interestingly, Milosevich informed investigators about the gunshot wound even before the second autopsy took place. It is worth noting that initially, blunt force trauma was considered the cause of death. Additionally, on September 22, the day Markovich disappeared, no one reported seeing Delon'S in Saint-Tropez. A postcard in Delon'S handwriting was discovered discarded in a box near Avenue Messine, close to Markovich's residence and the intersection where he entered the cab. Perhaps the most significant claim regarding Milosevich's involvement came directly from Milosevich himself, who eventually confessed to hiring an assassin to eliminate Markovic. However, his confession was deemed unconvincing, as reports indicated that Milosevich was mentally unstable at the time of his testimony. Markovic was apprehended in connection with the case and endured 11 months of imprisonment, enduring intense interrogations. However, in December 1969, he was released due to insufficient evidence. Around the same time, a scandal erupted in the media involving Pompidou, portraying him as a cuckold who allowed his wife to partake in orgies. Pompidou, who harbored aspirations of becoming the President of France, faced significant threats to his political ambitions due to this scandal. Employing a who benefits approach, Pompidou shifted the blame onto the Foreign Documentation and Counterintelligence Service. While he acknowledged his and his wife's involvement in such parties, he vehemently denied participating in orgies, claiming that the photograph featured a prostitute who bore a striking resemblance to his wife. Lucien Aimé Blanc, an officer from Marseille, was associated with the Foreign Documentation and Counterintelligence Service. He served in the Brigade of Search and Response and the Anti-Drug Brigade, specializing in cases related to organized crime, terrorism, hostage-taking, and kidnappings. In his memoirs, Aimé Blanc mentioned being approached by a friend to find a prostitute resembling Claude Pompidou, and it was Markovic who took her photograph. The veracity of this account remains speculative, but it is worth noting that Alain Delon himself suggested that the police attempted to frame innocent individuals for the murder. Delon, seeking justice and retribution for the mistreatment he endured from the authorities, penned a letter to President Pompidou. The letter detailed instances of harassment, insults, and threats. Subsequently, the letter was published in a newspaper, including quotes from a brazen police officer who openly stated, "Sooner or later, you will be punished one way or another." Officials even discussed their intention to plant drugs on Delon during his visits to Italy or Colombia. The true mastermind behind the murder of Stevan Markovich remains unknown, with all evidence pertaining to the case classified as secret within the vault of the General Directorate of Foreign Security, formerly known as the Foreign Documentation and Counterintelligence Service. However, one name that consistently surfaces in connection with the case is Jean-Charles Marchiani. Marchiani was recruited by the service at the young age of 19 and was a fervent supporter of Charles de Gaulle, known for his strong opposition to Pompidou. Interestingly, Marchiani also happened to be Marc Antony's cousin. Despite the involvement of Marchiani in the case, Georges Pompidou successfully assumed the presidency. Meanwhile, Alain Delon, benefiting from the attention garnered through this case, secured leading roles in 2 successful gangster films, Sicilian Clan and Borsellino. In 1991, Delon was honored as a Knight of the Legion of Honor, the highest badge of honor and official recognition of extraordinary merit in France. In 1976, the Brussels police discovered 2 lifeless bodies within an apartment. One of the victims was Milos Milosevich, who had been involved in activities against Yugoslav leader Tito. This murder occurred amidst a series of killings attributed to Yugoslav intelligence. The second victim was Miodrag Boskovic, an antiques dealer, hotel owner, and Serbian royalist activist. More than half a century later, the chances of unveiling Stevan Markovich's killer are slim. The case involved individuals of significant influence and power. Only 2 individuals associated with the case are still alive, Jean-Charles Marchiani and Alain Delon. However, as an experienced spy, Marchiani is unlikely to disclose any information, and Delon has chosen to maintain his silence. The prevailing belief is that no one within the French establishment wishes for this case to be resolved, whether it was orchestrated by Delon's's associates in the criminal underworld, French secret agents, or a collaboration between the two.